What does E.C.E stand for?
Electronic Conference Expo. Educational, creational, student, earlyhood, childhood education.
What does an E.C.E do?
Takes care of kids in like daycares and stuff.
They educate children in their early life.
They help with mentally disabled children often, or just like preschool, daycare, stuff like that. Younger.
They take care. Well, they're like basically like teachers. They take care of kids. They teach children.
With special needs, help students.
Have something to like relate to education. No idea what it is.
E.C.E stands for Early Child Education. The E.C.E is involved in the development and implementation of a variety of activities generated from the children's interests that also protects and promotes the children's intellectual, physical, social, and emotional growth in an early childhood learning setting or center. As shown in the previous videos, many individuals consider E.C.Es to be glorified babysitters, which is a misconception. Let's talk to some educators and see why they think having your E.C.E is beneficial.
So it's important for teachers to also have their early childhood education for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that the training is so completely different than what happens in the consecutive program. So we go much more in depth into what is developmentally appropriate for children, the understanding of inquiry-based learning, and also what is important in terms of emotional development. So we consider the whole child in a much more in-depth way than they do in the consecutive program. There's also such a strong focus on children 0 to 8. Whereas if you are in teachers college, that it's primary junior, so you are getting any child from full day kindergarten up to grade 5. It's completely and totally different. Currently, the model says that you don't have to have your kindergarten specialist to teach in kindergarten, whereas if you have your E.C.E, it's more than sufficient in terms of understanding what happens in terms of kindergarten, in terms of learning, what happens in terms of development, and what happens in terms of that family and how to support that family, which is a huge piece that is missing when we look at traditional education of teachers.
I think it's really important for teachers to study early childhood education because we talk about child development here, and not only do we talk about the stages of development and what can be expected from birth into early adolescence, but we also talk about the best practices that are associated with those changes in child development. I think it's really difficult for students to, in one class, take a pure child development class and then in another class learn about curriculum ideas or strategies for managing behavior, or classes where you learn about the daily schedule and what should happen on playgrounds, and expect the student to integrate that information into one understanding that helps them actually do the job. I also think that given what we know about child development and the vast range of development that happens at each stage of the life, that every teacher needs to know what can be typically expected, but also what came before and what's about to happen later, so that they're able to meet the needs of all of the different children who have different abilities in their classroom.
Looking at concurrent students getting their E.C.E, what will they be able to achieve when entering the classroom?
I feel more confident going into the classroom having my E.C.E because we learn about the adult-child interaction strategies, which gives us different ways to support the children to scaffold their learning. We also learn about conflict resolution through the 6 steps of problem solving, and that helps children solve whatever conflicts they're having in the present, and if they're younger, potentially even help them develop empathy skills, which they wouldn't develop otherwise. And it also gives them these tools to use throughout the rest of their life.
In the E.C.E program, we learn about focusing on the whole child. We learn that children develop cognitively, socially, emotionally, and physically. And with this knowledge, it helps us to better understand children when we go into the classroom, because we can assess our curriculum and develop our curriculum based on children's
An E.C.E background helps us to develop things like emergent curriculum, which is curriculum based off children's interest, and it helps children to stay engaged with their activities and learning. Emergent curriculum is beneficial for both a child and a teacher, since control is shared and children seem to display less behaviors in the classroom since they're actually interested in the topic they're learning.
I think that concurrent students have the benefit of an education where they learn how to support children with keeping their creativity through open-ended activities, supporting children with conflict resolution, and facilitating problem solving with children so that they can learn that not only the teacher or the educator can solve problems, but the children can work together to solve their own problems with the educator acting just as a facilitator. And that's something that concurrent E.C.E students will learn in the early childhood education program.
So why E.C.E is important is because understanding where a child is at or was at in terms of their development, their interests, all of that is incredibly important regardless of what age you're teaching, right? So that can start from kindergarten all the way up to grade 8, even high school. If you understand, are they a pre-operational thinker, okay? Or are they a symbolic thinker? If you understand the development part of it, then you can start to make those connections with those students. So I've used E.C.E strategies even in grade 6 classrooms because I have my primary and junior as well, so teaching from kindergarten to grade 6. Obviously, early childhood education strategies work well in a preschool setting, like a kindergarten classroom, but what people don't understand is that it goes all the way up, right? So making those meaningful connections, teaching them conflict resolution, having those adult-child interactions, understanding that their environment is a huge part of how they learn, that's all part of it. So, and I know for me that I've been able to use my E.C.E in school boards, in childcare centers, and now I'm teaching at the college. So, I mean, to say that E.C.E is just this is not fair to say that, right? There's lots of things, and a lot of the things that our students say is that when they get into the program, they're like, wow, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, right? Because they don't, they assume that it's, maybe it's just, you're going to sing songs. And that's part of what we do, but that is certainly not all of it, right? So having your E.C.E is absolutely going to make you a better teacher because you understand the children that you're teaching in a much deeper way.
Early childhood education.